On today's show, I've got a few bold takes about what the Cavs are going to do this year, how they're going to look this year, and how I think a few certain things are going to play out. We'll talk about that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I just want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Please do us a favor if you are listening, whether it's today your first time or if you listen every single day, make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It is the best way to grow the show. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button for us, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode, brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers with FanDuel can bet just $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Yesterday, I gave what I think are three pretty season-defining questions with the Cleveland Cavaliers that we don't know how they're going to play out. And today, I've got three pretty big takes with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the place I want to start is, appropriately enough, with the starting five. Because going into this season, we don't know what that starting five is going to look like. There are two, well, one certainty is that Max Strus will not be in it on opening night because we do know that he's ruled out for at least the first few months of the season because of a Jones fracture in his foot. And I would be surprised at this point if we saw him play for the Cavs prior to the calendar flipping to 2026. So we know he can be ruled out of the starting lineup at the start of the season. Darius Garland is a question mark. We don't know whether or not he's going to be available at the start of the season. We will find out. I don't think he should be available. I think it would be in the best interest of the Cavs and probably of Darius Garland as well to not be ready quite at the start of the regular season, take his time there, make sure he's better. But as I talk about this, I'm more so looking at this with the full season scope in mind. And with Max Strus out to start the season, I don't think it is a certainty that DeAndre Hunter is in the starting five. I do think, however, it would be the best thing for the Cavs. And I ultimately think that is the direction that Kenny Atkinson and the Cavs will go, is having DeAndre Hunter in that starting five. Because I think that he is the guy that fits in the best. Now, the issue is, of course, that Darius Garland, if he's not available to start the season, the Cavs are not only going to have one new starter in DeAndre Hunter, who was not a starter very frequently last year. I have to go look up how many games he started with the Cavs. Obviously, it was not many. I know that he started his very first game against the Minnesota Timberwolves when he was first acquired via trade, but he only started 5 games for the Cavs last season of the 27 that he played. So he is what would be considered a newcomer to the starting five. And having to do that isn't the most challenging thing in the world because there is some familiarity there. Having to insert him into the starting lineup while also potentially having a different starter in the backcourt alongside Donovan Mitchell could be a challenge, but I don't think that is some long-term issue because Darius Garland will be back sooner than later. Certainly, I think it's fair to assume that he'll be back before Max Strus will be back. But I do think DeAndre Hunter ultimately will be the starter to start the season. And the bold take here is that he is going to become the permanent starter, and it's going to be one of the best possible things for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, last year, I think one of the biggest criticisms I have of the way Kenny Atkinson handled the team after DeAndre Hunter was acquired in February is that Hunter really did not get a lot of run alongside the rest of the starting five. So you take a look at Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. DeAndre Hunter only played, according to Cleaning the Glass, 73 possessions alongside those 4 players during the regular season. I do not have the postseason numbers up in front of me, but during the regular season, he only played 73 possessions, which is not enough, right? Like you would expect him to play so much more alongside that group. And in the postseason, he only played 12 possessions. So it's not as if we know ultimately, at least firmly, what that looks like. Now, during the regular season, those numbers were very, very good in the 73 possessions. And of course, this is a very small sample size, and you have to keep in mind that it is a small sample size. But in the 73 possessions that he played with the rest of the starting five, the Cavs outscored their opponents by 28.8 points per 100 possessions. That does mean, naturally, that they outscored their opponents by less than 28.8 points because they didn't reach that 100 possession mark, but they were very, very good. Yes, it was a very small sample size, but they had an offensive rating of 130.1 and a defensive rating of 101.4. Both numbers very, very, very good in ordinance with league average. And the other thing that this does, and the thing that actually I do think might be considered to be the most important part of this, is that DeAndre Hunter in that role is playing small forward. And he is, I think, much more of a natural small forward than he is a power forward. His size certainly suggests that, being listed at 6'8". And last year, after the trade, Hunter, again, this is according to Cleaning the Glass, Hunter played 385 possessions at small forward. The Cavs had a net rating of 12.5 while he was at small forward, which is a 96th percentile type thing. In comparison to all the other 5-man lineups, like plus 12.5, 96 percentile for qualifying lineups, of course. So 385 possessions at small forward. DeAndre Hunter played, unfortunately, for the Cavs. And I say unfortunately as a relative term. Like, they were not bad, but they were better when he was playing small forward. When he played power forward, which was 1,015 possessions, the Cavs outscored their opponents by 9 points per 100 possessions. Still very good, but not quite that same elite number as what it is when he played small forward. So by having him in the starting five, one, it puts him at what I think is his natural position much more frequently. This doesn't mean that he should never play power forward, because I do think there are lineups that make sense with him playing power forward. For instance, last year, the lineup of Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, DeAndre Hunter, and Jared Allen outscored opponents by 10.4 points per 100 possessions in just under 100 possessions. So that was one of the really good ones. But when he played alongside Darius Garland, Ty Jerome, Max Strus, and Jared Allen, 90 possessions, the Cavs were outscored by 13 points per 100 possessions. There was not as much of a consistency, if you will, for the Cavs on the defensive end of the floor when Hunter was playing the power forward spot. And part of that is because DeAndre Hunter is just not a very good rebounder. That's why when he is playing the power forward spot, he's a little bit miscast. Now, the natural pushback from the Cavs is they don't necessarily believe in positions that way. Like, the role is not all that different. And that might be true, but the personnel is different. And that matters so much, because if DeAndre Hunter is not a great rebounder, and he's never proven to be a great rebounder, no matter where he's been in his career, if he's playing alongside both of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, it's not going to be that impactful. Like, you're not going to notice the fact that, oh, the small forward, maybe not a great rebounder. But if he's playing power forward alongside only one of those guys, and both of those guys are good rebounders, but if he's playing alongside only one of those guys, the rebounding slack does need to be picked up somewhere else. And this is a roster for the Cavs that over the years has struggled to find rebounds away from the bigs. They've not necessarily had a really good, at least in the Donovan Mitchell era, so to speak. They've not really had a good smaller rebounder. Like Lamar Stevens kind of did it for a little while. And Max Strus, I do think, does it probably better than anybody else that the Cavs have on the wing, but they don't have reliable rebounders on the wing. They have naturally relied upon their big guys to handle that job. And that is, I guess, more their job than anybody else. But when you are also playing with we'll say 1.5 small guards, because I do to some extent agree with the way Kenny Atkinson terms things with Donovan Mitchell not being a small guard because his wingspan is so long. But you look at that and say, okay, well, Darius Garland is a small guard. So you're not going to expect a lot of rebounding from him. And the Cavs did that too with Ty Jerome last year, even though he was 6'5", he played like a little bit of a smaller guard. So they're looking for rebounding in different places. And locking DeAndre Hunter in as a starting small forward is going to mean that we should see, and yes, everything is a small sample size with him because he only played 27 games. But of his possessions, over 1,000 possessions for him of the 1,400-ish that he played in the regular season with the Cavs came at power forward. And I'm not saying that he should never play power forward because I don't think that should be true. I think there are certain lineups where it might make sense. And maybe with Lonzo Ball on the floor for the Cavs, and we will talk about him coming up in a minute too. But I do think that could maybe change some of the lineups. And I think Lonzo is a guy that is going to unlock a lot of things in terms of lineup flexibility for the Cavs. Maybe that helps out lineups that have DeAndre Hunter at the power forward spot in terms of rebounding, in terms of some other things. But ultimately, if DeAndre Hunter is put into the starting five, maybe he's not the same connector that Max Strus is, because he's not. His passing, I do think, leaves a little bit to be desired. But I look at it and say, okay, this is going to mean that the Cavs' fifth best player or fourth best player, depending on how you view him, is going to be playing his natural position a majority of the time. Doesn't have to be 100%, but it should be over 50. And I think that ultimately will lead to a lot of success. Last year, the starting lineup for the Cavs was really, really good. If you watch the Cavs all season, you know the starting lineup for the Cavs was really, really good. I think that if this happens this year, if DeAndre Hunter is the starting small forward for the Cleveland Cavaliers, if he is the guy, if he plays the majority of his minutes at the small forward spot as opposed to the power forward spot, I think the Cavs will really reap the benefits from it. Last year, according to Cleaning the Glass, the 523 possessions that the Cavs starting five played had a net rating of plus 11.5. If DeAndre Hunter's the starting small forward, I believe that will be a better number this year for that starting five. I think that'll be the case. Now, we have to wait and see how this plays out, but I do think DeAndre Hunter will be the starting small forward when the season begins, and I would anticipate he's going to be the starting small forward all year long. Now, I've mentioned Lonzo Ball. I think he's a total game changer for the Cavs for what they should want to be this year. And we're going to talk about what exactly I expect out of Lonzo Ball next, right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade because 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins, very important. Nutrients, very, very important. Don't need me to tell you that. I think you know that stuff. Plus, zero sugar, zero crashes. Pretty good, right? Sounds like something you should want. And for me personally, the thing I can't stand is the crash, right? The energy boost that you might get from certain ways you can consume caffeine is great. But the downside, the bad part, is like 2 hours later, you feel worse than before you had it. 5 Hour Energy eliminates that. There's no crash, zero sugar. That is something that I think makes it all the better. Plus, they're very portable. They've got big taste in a very tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get the boost when you need, wherever you need it. So enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. Right now is the time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or maybe be bold, adventurous. Go out on a limb. Try something new in store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5, HOUR, energy.com, or on Amazon today. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, and I would appreciate if you do subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform is the one that you prefer. And I brought up Lonzo Ball briefly in the first segment, but my bold take with him is I think Lonzo Ball is going to change the identity of this team for the better. And I do think that the identity of this team started to shift a little bit the day the Cavs made the trade for Lonzo Ball. Of course, if you've been living under a rock all summer, the Cavs traded Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball. Nothing else was involved. No draft picks, no money changed hands, nothing. Isaac Okoro out, Lonzo Ball in. You might be sitting here and saying, well, Lonzo Ball won. And okay, hang on. I have to give by law, I am compelled to say, if Lonzo Ball is healthy, because he has played 70 games in 4 years, I have to say that, contractually obligated to say that. Okay, now that that's over with, we can actually talk about it. But I think that the identity of the Cavs changed a little bit the day they made that trade. Now, that, of course, was not a move made with only one move in mind. It was the start of a series of moves, because I believe it was the day after the Lonzo Ball trade. It was then reported that the Cavs had agreed to terms with Sam Merrill on his contract, preventing him from reaching free agency. And then a day or two after that, Ty Jerome ended up with the Memphis Grizzlies, leaving via free agency. And then a few days later, Larry Nance Jr. returned to the Cleveland Cavaliers for a second stint in Cleveland, which I do think will be a very, very good pickup, but not what we're talking about today. But this was the first move in a series of moves. And I don't think that the Cavs needed some identity overhaul, right? They won 64 games last year. They had a rough go in the postseason, in part because of injuries. And Lonzo Ball does not fix the in part because of injuries thing. And truthfully, neither does Larry Nance Jr. But I do look at what Lonzo Ball can provide, and a big part of it is that lineup flexibility. But another part of it is the Cavs now do not have very many players that are one-way players. They don't have guys that are only offense or only defense can be relied upon. Like Isaac Okoro, very good defender. I would argue a better defender than Lonzo Ball, even if I think Lonzo maybe fits schematically a little bit better. And his size allows the Cavs to do certain things in a different way that might be better for them in the postseason. Just pound for pound, I think Isaac Okoro is probably a little bit better defender. But Lonzo Ball is somebody that does need to be respected offensively in a way that teams in the postseason were never going to respect Isaac Okoro. The same thing can be said for Ty Jerome, just on the inverse. He was a very good offensive player last year. He did not have anything even close to a good series against the Indiana Pacers in the conference semifinals last year, but he was also a poor defender. He was somebody that was in the postseason targeted repeatedly. And if the Memphis Grizzlies make the postseason this year, I suspect that Ty Jerome will be again targeted repeatedly. And the question with him becomes, is the juice, the offensive juice that he provides, is that worth the squeeze? It was not against the Pacers because Ty Jerome, truthfully, was not very good in that series. That's not going to happen now. And that's why I think Lonzo Ball helps to change this identity, because the Cavs have gone from a team that, yes, Darius Garland is always going to be attacked defensively. And I do think he fights and puts in effort, but he's a smaller guard. And that can be a difficult thing to overcome, no matter how strong you are, no matter how much fight you put. Like, you could just naturally be at a disadvantage. And the Cavs kind of are because of him. I do think that the injury he had in the postseason is something that amplified that quite a bit. But he can be considered a one-way player. He's a great offensive player, but he's not considered a two-way player. Donovan Mitchell, I think, has become a better defender than I anticipated him being in Cleveland. Maybe if you want to consider him a one-way player, you can, but I do think he fights defensively. After that, you can go through the rest of the rotation. Evan Mobley is obviously not. Jared Allen is obviously not. Sam Merrill is a good defender, even if he might not quite look like it, right? Dean Wade, maybe you could make the case as a defense-only guy because of his reluctance to shoot at times, but I think that's probably a little unfair because he is a very good shooter that does get respected more than Isaac Okoro did. Larry Nance Jr., two-way guy. Lonzo Ball, two-way guy. Like, we can go up and down the rotation here, and the important thing, the very, very important thing, I think, for championship caliber teams, which the Cleveland Cavaliers absolutely are, when the postseason arrives, you cannot have players that are not star players that are one-way guys. And Lonzo Ball, because of what he does on both ends of the floor, started to flip that script. His acquisition has changed that for the Cavs because he's a two-way guy. He's good offensively. He's good defensively. That matters a lot. And I think that is a way that Lonzo Ball changes the identity of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the other thing that I do want to talk about with him is the positional flexibility that he provides, because Lonzo Ball is a very traditional point guard in terms of he is a pass-first player. He can put pressure on the rim. Maybe he's not great at that. I think that is one area where He could serve to be better. He is going to shoot a lot of threes. I would expect him to shoot a better percent from beyond the arc this year than he did in the 35 games he played last year. And I look at what he can do on both ends and say, okay, that is a traditional point guard, but it's in the body of a 6'7" guy. He is a point guard in the body of a small forward. Now, will the body be durable? Different question for a different show. But because of that, it allows the Cavs to maybe play DeAndre Hunter at power forwards in certain lineups, because Lonzo Ball for a guard is far and away the best rebounding guard that the Cavs have on the roster now. Maybe it does allow them to play some 3-guard lineups where Sam Merrill on paper can be the small forward, but in actuality, he's defending a point guard or shooting guard on the other team, because Lonzo Ball can handle the best wing player on the opponent defensively. Those are the ways that I think he really changes the team for the Cavs. Now, he's a role player. I wouldn't expect him to play more than 22, 24 minutes per game, somewhere in that area. And that's fine. But I think that just his presence changes the makeup of this Cavs team. I think it's going to change what they're able to do. And ultimately, I think that they're going to go from a team that was viewed, and I know that they always want to be, we are a team about defense, and they've got 2 great defenders in the interior. Evan Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year. Jared Allen, a very good defender as well. They've always talked about being defense first. But last year, they were the best offensive team, essentially, from start to finish in the NBA. They were not a defense first team last year, no matter how much they wanted to say it. They were an offense first team last year. This year, I think Lonzo Ball's addition, as somebody I view as the ultimate role player chess piece, I think that is something that can put the Cavaliers maybe not back to being defense first, because I expect them to be electric offensively yet again. But I think that this bridges the gap quite a bit between what the Cavs are or should expect to be offensively and who the Cavs should realistically be defensively this year. Now, last season, the Cleveland Cavaliers made a very, very big trade. They acquired DeAndre Hunter. This year, I don't think a move like that is coming. I'll tell you why next, right here on Locked On Cavs. But first, today's show brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season, it's finally here. We are through 2 weeks. If you are a Cleveland Browns fan, those 2 weeks have not been very good at all. And this week, I don't know that it suspects to get much better, because the Cleveland Browns will, of course, on Sunday, play host to the Green Bay Packers. And last week, the Browns were the heaviest underdog in the entire NFL. They were 11.5, I believe FanDuel had it. They were 11.5 point underdogs on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. And of course, the Baltimore Ravens covered because the Browns stink. Well, this week, the Browns are at home. That should mean good things, right? Wrong. The Green Bay Packers are 8.5 point favorites over the Cleveland Browns in week 3. The Browns are the second largest underdog in the entire NFL this week, only behind the Miami Dolphins, a 12.5 point. Wow. 12.5 point underdog on the road against the Buffalo Bills on Thursday Night Football. Maybe you're confident in the Browns. I wouldn't be confident in the Browns this week. The Packers are coming off sort of that mini bye as they played last Thursday. I think Green Bay might be the best team in football. They've looked really good, even though, I kind of think Micah Parsons looks fat in the number 1. I don't know that a single digit was the play for a guy his size, but Green Bay, very, very good. The Browns, very, very bad. If you believe in the Browns, FanDuel is the place to believe in them. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first $5 bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Yeah, that's right. Bet $5. That bet wins $300 in bonus bets all across the app. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that is FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And you could get $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. And like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcast. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit the thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. The Cleveland Cavaliers last year made a very big trade. They acquired DeAndre Hunter at the trade deadline. And one of the things that instantly went into my mind the day the Cavs made the trade was, well, the Cavs are probably not going to win the title this year. And why did that pop into my mind, you ask? Because teams that make trades during the season very rarely, or impactful trades, I should say, very rarely end up winning the title. The last team that made an in-season trade for a starting caliber player that won the NBA championship that year was the Milwaukee Bucks back in the 2020-2021 season. The Bucks that year traded for PJ Tucker. Now, PJ Tucker was a starter for them. He did not have very impressive numbers, but he was a starter for them. And that was the last time that happened. And I suppose, and this is actually, I think, a very interesting discussion to be had. Maybe today is not the time and place for it. I actually think if you want to make a case, and I don't believe there should be an asterisk on any championship because I think it's really, really hard to do. But I suppose you could probably, I think there's a bigger case to put an asterisk on the Bucks championship than there's the Lakers in the bubble. Different conversation for a different day. But the Bucks are the last team to trade for a starting caliber player and win the title that year. Prior to that, the Toronto Raptors did it when they won the title in 2019. They made a trade for Marc Gasol. That was, of course, a really, really big deal. Before that, the Golden State Warriors won the title. They never made a trade during any season in which they won any of their 4 titles. The Cleveland Cavaliers back in 2016, they traded for Channing Frye. I don't know if that counts. Like, Channing Frye was a nice role player, but he was not an impact player in that finals. He was at times, I don't know that he was actually collecting DNP CDs in the finals, but he's not playing meaningful minutes. He was playing garbage time because the first 6 games of that series were all blowouts. There were not close games in the early parts of that series until game 7 was obviously very close. But the gist of it is here, over the last 10 years, there have been 2 teams that have made a trade for a starting caliber player during the season. There have been teams that have made trades for very important players before the season, during training camp even. You can look at the Boston Celtics. Their trade for Drew Holiday during training camp of that year, just before it, was very, very big. But once the season gets started, championship teams typically are who they are. And the Cavaliers right now, I think, are a championship caliber team. If you want to poke holes in this roster, the holes right now are the health of this roster. And that's fine because the Cavs have guys, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, DeAndre Hunter, even, that have had some significant injuries, and it has cost them. And maybe that'll be the case this year. We have no way of knowing. We have no way of knowing beyond what we already know about Darius, what we already know about Max. We have no way of knowing what this team is going to look like from a health standpoint when the postseason arrives. And that is true for all 30 teams in basketball. We don't know what any of these teams are going to encounter as far as injuries go throughout the season. But as currently constructed, the Cavs are a championship caliber team. I don't think I felt that way 12 months ago. Sitting here on September 15th, 2 months before media day, 2 months before training camp, I was not imagining the Cavs were going to win the finals or get to the finals last year or start off 15-0 and have another 16-game winning streak and win 64 games. I didn't see that stuff in the cards. And honestly, I don't think anyone did. This year, they've got expectations. They are built like a championship team, and championship teams kind of are who they are. And I think the Cavs know who they are, and they have made moves this offseason to get better. But given that aspect that great teams really don't make in-season trades, and the restrictions that the Cavs have as far as the second apron goes, I would be very, very surprised this year if the Cavs make an in-season move. Now, they can theoretically sign a guy on a buyout, but that player needs to be making less than the mid-level exception. So even their buyout market could potentially be limited if they do end up going that route at a certain point. But that is not often for an impact player. It's even rarer that a championship caliber team has a guy they acquired via buyout that is a contributor in the postseason. So the Cavs are going into training camp. The roster's not finalized. They don't have a full 15-man roster. I would be very surprised if they have a full 15-man roster when the regular season begins. They will have 14. They're going to add somebody. Don't know who it is as of right now, at least not officially. but they are going to be who they are. And this is going to be a very, very good team. That's not the bold take. The bold take is they're not going to make changes. They're going to go into this team, and I imagine they will have 14 players on this roster on opening night. And when the playoffs begin, the Cavs might have 15 players. They might add somebody, maybe somebody like Naquan Tomlin gets boosted from a two-way contract to a standard contract. Maybe they add a player like that. Maybe it's a player like Javonte Green last year. But the 14 players on the roster opening night for the Cavs, I think those 14 players will all be on the roster when the postseason begins in April. And that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Cavs. Again, want to say thank you to everybody that makes Locked On Cavs their first listen every single day. Very much appreciate all the everydayers out there. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for listening yesterday and tomorrow as well. You can get the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. And of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.